I took the little white pill every single day for 8 years because my mother told me it was the only thing keeping me alive. She said I had a rare genetic condition that could stop my heart at any moment. She said the pills were the only reason I was still here. I believed her completely. I trusted her with my life. Until the day she discovered who was actually taking them. And the truth destroyed everything I thought I knew about my own mother. If you have ever been let down by family on a day that was supposed to be perfect, drop a comment. And also tell me where you're watching from. Drop your city. I read every single one. My name is Sophia Reynolds, and this is the story of how my own mother fed me disability pills for 8 years, and how the moment she found out who was really swallowing them changed our family forever. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside Portland, Oregon. Our house was always neat, always quiet, and always under my mother's complete control. My mom, Elaine, was the kind of woman who ran everything. She decided what we ate, what we wore, who we were friends with, and most importantly, what was wrong with us. My dad worked long hours as a truck driver and was rarely home, so Mom was the one who made all the rules. When I was 10 years old, I started having headaches. Normal headaches, the kind most kids get from too much screen time or not drinking enough water. But my mother turned those headaches into something much bigger. She took me to doctor after doctor until she found one who would listen to her. She told the doctor I had fainting spells, dizziness, and heart palpitations, things I had never experienced. Within a few months, I was diagnosed with a rare heart condition that supposedly required daily medication for the rest of my life. The pills started then. Small white tablets, twice a day. Mom would stand in the kitchen every morning and every night, watching me swallow them with a glass of water. She would say the same thing every time. "This is what keeps you with us, Sophia. Don't ever forget that." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my mother. She was the one who took care of me when I was sick. She was the one who stayed up with me when I had nightmares. She was the one who told me she loved me more than anything in the world. So I took the pills. For 8 years. I grew up thinking I was fragile. I was told I couldn't play sports, couldn't go on school trips that involved physical activity, couldn't even stay at friends' houses overnight because what if something happened? My mother controlled every part of my life under the excuse that she was protecting me. My younger brother, Ethan, was treated completely differently. He was healthy, strong, and allowed to do whatever he wanted. Mom never gave him any pills. She never watched him swallow medication. She never told him he could die at any moment. I was the sick one, the fragile one, the one who needed constant protection. By the time I turned 18, I had accepted this version of myself. I didn't apply to colleges far away because Mom said the stress would be too much for my heart. I didn't go out with friends much because she said being out late could trigger an episode. I lived in a bubble she had carefully built around me. Then everything changed one ordinary Thursday evening. I came home from my part-time job at the local bookstore and found my mother sitting at the kitchen table with a bottle of my pills in front of her. She looked pale. Her hands were shaking. She had never looked like that before. "Sophia," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "who has been taking these pills?" I frowned, confused. "What do you mean? I take them. I always take them. You watch me every day." She stared at me for a long time like she was seeing me for the first time. Then she whispered the words that would shatter my entire world. "I just found out. I've been giving you sugar pills for the last 8 years. These are not real medication." I felt the floor disappear beneath me. "What?" I said, my voice cracking. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "I thought you needed them. I thought you were sick. But today, Today, I found out the truth. Someone else has been taking the real medication. Someone has been using you as a cover. My heart started pounding so hard, I thought it might actually stop. I looked at the bottle in her hand, the same bottle I had been swallowing twice a day since I was 10 years old. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. For 8 years, I had been living as a sick person while someone else was using my illness for their own benefit. Everything was finally falling into place. Or so I thought. But the real twist, the one that would destroy our family completely, was still coming. My mother's words hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. I stared at the bottle in her hand, the same white bottle I had seen every single day for 8 years, the same bottle she had watched me swallow with a glass of water twice a day since I was 10 years old, the same bottle she had used to control my entire life. "What do you mean they were sugar pills?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother's hands were shaking so badly, she almost dropped the bottle. She sat down at the kitchen table like her legs could no longer hold her. "I thought they were real," she said, her voice cracking. "The doctor gave them to me. I trusted him. But today I found out the truth. These pills have been sugar pills for years. Someone has been taking the real medication and replacing them with these." I felt the room tilt. "Who?" I asked. My mother looked at me with tears in her eyes. But there was something else in her face too, something closer to fear. "I don't know yet, but someone in this house has been using you, Sophia. Someone has been making you believe you were sick so they could take the real pills for themselves." My heart started pounding so hard it hurt. For 8 years, I had lived like a fragile, broken girl. I had missed school trips, sports, sleepovers, and any chance of a normal teenage life because my mother told me my heart could stop at any moment. I had let her control every part of my life because I believed I was sick. And now she was telling me it was all a lie. I felt something dark and heavy rise in my chest. Not just shock, not just sadness, something closer to rage. I stood up so fast, the chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Where are the real pills?" I asked. My mother looked down at the table. "I don't know. I only found these sugar pills hidden in the back of the medicine cabinet today. The real ones are gone." I walked over to the cabinet and started pulling everything out. Old bottles of vitamins, cold medicine, painkillers. I dumped them all on the counter. My hands were shaking as I searched for anything that looked familiar. That's when I found it. A small orange prescription bottle tucked behind everything else. The label had my name on it, but the date was from last month. And the pills inside were not white. They were blue. I held the bottle up so my mother could see it. She stared at it like she had seen a ghost. "Those are the real ones," she whispered. I opened the bottle and poured a few pills into my palm. They were small, blue, and had tiny numbers stamped on them. I had never seen these before in my life. My mother's face went completely white. "Sophia, those are strong. Very strong. If someone has been taking these every day for years..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Someone in this house had been taking powerful medication meant for me while I had been swallowing sugar pills and living like I was dying. I looked at my mother. "Who else lives in this house?" I asked, my voice cold. She swallowed hard. "You, me, and your brother Ethan." The name hung in the air between us. Ethan, my younger brother, the golden child, the one who was never sick, the one who got to play sports, stay out late, and live a normal life while I was kept inside like a fragile doll. I thought about how Ethan had been acting lately, how he had been sleeping more than usual, how he had started having mood swings,
how he had been asking me for money more and more often. My stomach turned. I didn't want to believe it, but the pieces were starting to fit together in a way that made me feel sick. If you have ever discovered that the person who was supposed to love you the most had been using you for years, you know how heavy that kind of betrayal feels.
My mother started crying at the kitchen table. "I thought I was protecting you," she sobbed. "I thought the pills were real. I never meant for any of this to happen." I looked at her and felt something break inside me. "You watched me take sugar pills for 8 years, Mom. You told me I could die if I missed even one dose. You used my illness to control every part of my life, and now you're telling me it was all fake?" She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "I need to know the truth," I said. "All of it." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my bed with my laptop and started searching. I looked up the blue pills. They were powerful anxiety and pain medication, strong enough to be addictive, strong enough to cause serious side effects if taken long term. I thought about Ethan. He had been acting strange for the past 2 years. He would disappear into his room for hours. He would get angry over small things. He would sleep all day on weekends. I had thought it was just normal teenage stuff. But now it all made sense. The next morning, I waited until my mother left for work. Then I went into Ethan's room. It was messy, like always. Clothes on the floor, empty soda cans everywhere. I started looking through his drawers, his closet, under his bed. I felt sick doing it, but I had to know. I found them in the bottom drawer of his desk, hidden inside an old video game case. Dozens of blue pills, the same ones from the orange bottle. I sat on the floor of his room, holding the pills in my hand, and felt something inside me completely shatter. My own brother had been taking the real medication while I had been living like a sick person for 8 years. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the pills, and felt a cold, quiet kind of rage settle in my chest. When Ethan came home from school that afternoon, I was waiting for him at the kitchen table with the bottle of blue pills in front of me. He froze when he saw them. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then he tried to smile. "Hey, Soph, what's that?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "You know exactly what this is," I said. "You've been taking these for years, while Mom was giving me sugar pills. You let me believe I was dying. You let me live like a prisoner in my own life. Why?" Ethan's smile disappeared. He looked at the floor. "I needed them," he said finally. "I had really bad anxiety. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't function. Mom would never have given them to me if I asked. So when she started giving you the pills, I just switched them." I felt my hands start to shake. "You switched them," I repeated. "You let me believe I had a life-threatening condition for 8 years so you could have anxiety medication?" He shrugged, like it wasn't a big deal. "You were fine without them," he said. "You're healthy. I wasn't. I needed them more." I stood up slowly. "You ruined my life, Ethan. You stole 8 years from me. And you did it knowing exactly what you were doing." He looked at me then, and for the first time, I saw something like fear in his eyes. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I didn't answer right away, because in that moment, I didn't know what I was going to do. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not even close. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Ethan stood there, staring at the blue pills in my hand like they were evidence in a crime he never thought would be discovered. My mother was still sitting at the table, her face pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. I looked at my brother and repeated the question, my voice shaking with rage. "You switched them," I said.
You let me believe I was dying for 8 years so you could take the real medication? How long have you been doing this, Ethan? He looked at the floor, his shoulders slumped. It started when I was 14, he said quietly. I had really bad anxiety. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus in school. Mom would never have given me those pills if I asked. So when she started giving you the medication, I saw the bottle and I just switched a few. Then a few more. Then it became every day. My mother let out a sob. You knew she was taking sugar pills? She whispered. You knew and you said nothing? Ethan shrugged, but his eyes were wet. She was fine. She wasn't sick. I was the one who needed them. I felt a wave of nausea hit me. I had spent 8 years living in fear. I had missed out on childhood, on friendships, on normal teenage experiences because I believed I could drop dead at any moment. And my own brother had known the truth the entire time. I looked at my mother. And you, I said, my voice cold. You watched me take those pills every day. You told me I could die if I missed one. You used my illness to control every part of my life. Did you ever even check if the pills were real? My mother looked broken. I trusted the doctor, she said. I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was doing the right thing. The right thing? I laughed bitterly. You destroyed my life, Mom. You made me believe I was broken. You kept me trapped here because you were scared I would leave. And all this time, the pills were fake. The three of us stood there in the kitchen, the weight of 8 years of lies hanging between us. I turned to Ethan. I want you to leave, I said. I don't want to see you right now. He tried to argue, but I cut him off. Get out, I said. He grabbed his bag and left without another word. My mother started crying harder. Sophia, please, she begged. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I looked at her and felt something inside me finally break completely. You didn't know? I said. You controlled every part of my life for 8 years because you thought I was sick? You never once questioned the diagnosis. You never once took me for a second opinion. You just used it as an excuse to keep me here. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I need time, I said. I need to figure out who I am without all these lies. That night, I packed a bag and left the house. I drove to a cheap motel on the edge of town and checked in. For the first time in my life, I was completely alone. No mother watching over me, no pills to take, no fear of dying. But instead of feeling free, I felt lost. The next morning, I went to the doctor who had originally prescribed the pills. I sat in his office and told him everything. He looked shocked. He pulled up my file and started reading. I never prescribed sugar pills, he said. The medication I gave your mother was real. If she was giving you sugar pills, someone must have switched them after they left my office. I felt the last piece of the puzzle click into place. My mother had been telling the truth about one thing. She really thought the pills were real. The person who had been switching them was Ethan, and he had been doing it for 8 years. I left the doctor's office feeling numb. When I got back to the motel, my phone was blowing up with messages from my mother and Jessica. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I sat on the bed and cried for the girl I used to be. The girl who believed she was dying. The girl who never got to live. But I also cried for the woman I was becoming. The woman who was finally free. And the woman who was going to make sure no one in my family ever used me again. The next few days were a blur. I stayed at the motel and tried to process everything. I looked up the blue pills online and learned they were powerful anti-anxiety medication that could cause serious side effects if taken long-term. Ethan had been taking them every day for years. I thought about all the times he had seemed off, the mood swings, the sleeping all day, the way he would snap at small things. I had thought it was normal teenage behavior. Now I realized it was the pills. On the fourth day, my mother showed up at the motel. She stood outside my door looking smaller than I had ever seen her. When I opened the door, she didn't try to come inside. She just stood there with tears in her eyes. "I talked to Ethan," she said. "He admitted everything. I'm so sorry, Sophia. I never meant for any of this to happen." I didn't invite her in. I just stood in the doorway and listened. She told me she had confronted Ethan the night I left. He had broken down and confessed that he had been switching the pills since he was 14. He said he was addicted and scared to stop. He said he was sorry.
He said he was sorry. My mother's voice broke. "I failed you," she said. "I failed both of you. I thought I was protecting you, but I was only controlling you. I don't know how to fix this." I looked at her for a long time. "You can't fix 8 years in one conversation," I said. "I need space. I need time to figure out who I am without all the lies you both put on me." She nodded, tears falling down her cheeks. "I understand," she whispered. "Just know that I love you. I always have." She turned to leave, but I stopped her. "Mom," I said, "I need you to do one thing for me." She turned back, hope in her eyes. "Tell Ethan he needs to get help. Real help. And tell him he is not allowed to contact me until he does." She nodded. "I will. I promise." She left after that. I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling exhausted but also strangely lighter. For the first time in 8 years, I wasn't taking any pills, real or fake. I wasn't living under the shadow of a disease that never existed. I was free. But freedom came with its own kind of pain. I had to learn how to live without the fear that had defined me for so long. I had to learn how to trust my own body again. I had to learn how to forgive, or at least move forward. And I had to decide what I was going to do about my brother. The next week, I started seeing a therapist. I told her everything. The pills, the lies, the way my mother had used my illness to control me, the way my brother had betrayed me for his own comfort. She listened without judging. Then she said something that stuck with me. "Sophia, you were given a false identity for 8 years. Now you get to decide who you really are." Those words became my new mantra. I started exercising, I went for long walks, I ate what I wanted without worrying about my heart condition. I applied to online college courses. Slowly, I started building a life that felt like mine. But the anger was still there. Every time I thought about Ethan taking those pills while I lived in fear, the rage would rise again. I knew I had to deal with it before it consumed me. Then, 2 weeks after I left home, my mother called me. "Sophia," she said, her voice trembling. "Ethan is in the hospital. He overdosed on the pills. They're saying it's critical. Please come. I don't know what to do." I stood frozen in the middle of the motel room, the phone pressed to my ear. For a second, the world went completely silent. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. The same pills I had been swallowing for 8 years, the sugar pills I thought were keeping me alive, had nearly killed my brother. I felt a storm of emotions crash over me at once. Rage, shock, guilt, and something darker that I didn't want to name. "I'm coming," I said, my voice sounding far away even to myself. I hung up, grabbed my keys, and drove to the hospital in a daze. The entire way there, I kept replaying the last conversation I had with Ethan, the way he had shrugged and said, "You were fine without them." The way he had looked at me like his addiction was somehow my fault. When I arrived at the ICU, my mother was sitting in the waiting area, looking smaller and older than I had ever seen her. Her eyes were swollen from crying. The moment she saw me, she stood up and tried to hug me, but I stepped back. "How is he?" I asked. She wiped her eyes. "They're saying he took a very high dose. His body is struggling. They have him on a ventilator. The doctor said if he had taken even a little more—" She couldn't finish the sentence. I sat down across from her. The silence between us was heavy. After a long time, she spoke again. The doctor asked me how long he had been taking the medication. I told them 8 years. They looked at me like I was crazy. They said long-term use at that dosage could cause severe organ damage. I stared at the floor. So he's been taking the real pills every day for 8 years, while I was taking sugar pills and living like I was dying? My mother nodded, tears falling again. "I didn't know, Sophia. I swear I didn't know." I looked up at her. "But you never questioned it. You never took me for a second opinion. You never checked the pills. You just used my illness to keep me under your control. And even use it to feed his addiction. Both of you used me." She didn't argue. She just cried harder. A nurse came out and told us we could see Ethan for a few minutes. He was still unconscious, hooked up to machines, looking pale and small in the hospital bed. I stood there staring at my brother, the same boy who had once played video games with me, who had laughed at my jokes, who had switched my medication for 8 years so he could get high. I felt nothing but emptiness. When we left his room, my mother grabbed my arm. "Sophia, please don't leave me alone in this," she begged. "I know I made terrible mistakes. I know I failed you, but he's still your brother." I pulled my arm away gently. "He stopped being my brother the day he decided my life was worth less than his pills," I said. I walked out of the hospital and sat in my car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to drive away and never come back. Another part of me, the part that had spent 8 years believing I was sick, felt a strange sense of responsibility. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits, doctor's meetings, and painful conversations. Ethan woke up on the 3rd day. When he saw me sitting in his room, he looked away. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice weak from the ventilator. I didn't reply right away. I just sat there, letting the silence stretch between us. Finally, I asked the question that had burned inside me. "Why, Ethan? Why did you do it for so long?" He looked at the ceiling, tears slipping down his cheeks. "Because I was scared. I was scared of feeling everything. The anxiety was killing me. I saw how Mom controlled you with the pills, and I took advantage of it. I told myself you were fine. I told myself it wasn't hurting you." I felt a cold laugh rise in my throat. "You watched me miss out on my entire childhood. You watched me live in fear every single day. And you told yourself it wasn't hurting me?" He started crying harder. "I know," he said. "I know what I did. I hate myself for it." I stood up. "Hating yourself doesn't fix what you broke," I said. "I'm not here to forgive you right now. I'm here because you're still my brother, even if you stopped acting like one a long time ago." I left the room before he could say anything else. My mother was waiting outside. She looked at me with desperate eyes. "Sophia, he needs help, real help. Rehab, therapy, everything. But he can't do it alone." I looked at her for a long moment. "Then you help him," I said. "Because I can't be the one who fixes this family anymore. I spent 8 years being the sick one. I'm done carrying everyone else's mistakes." She nodded slowly, understanding for the first time that I was serious. Over the next 2 weeks, I stayed in the motel and focused on myself. I started seeing the therapist regularly. I began exercising for the first time in my life without worrying about my heart condition. I applied to online college courses. Slowly, I started to feel like a real person again. But the anger was still there.
Every time I thought about Ethan lying in that hospital bed because of the pills he had stolen from me, or my mother watching me take sugar pills for 8 years, the rage would rise again. Then one afternoon, my mother called me again. "Sophia," she said, her voice shaky. "Ethan wants to talk to you. He says he has something important to tell you. He says it's about why he really started taking the pills." I felt my stomach tighten. I didn't want to go, but something in her voice told me this was bigger than I thought. I drove to the hospital that evening. Ethan was sitting up in bed now, looking pale but awake. When I walked in, he looked nervous. "I need to tell you the truth. The full truth." I sat down and waited. He took a deep breath. "It wasn't just anxiety," he said. "Mom, she was giving me the pills too. Not the sugar ones. The real ones. She started when I was 12. She said I had the same condition as you. She said I needed them to stay healthy. But she never told you. She kept it secret from you because she didn't want you to feel like you weren't special." I felt the world tilt again. My mother had been giving both of us medication, but only I was told I was dying. Ethan kept talking, his voice breaking. "When I found out the pills you were taking were fake, I didn't say anything because I was scared she would stop giving me the real ones. I was addicted by then. I needed them. So I kept switching them. I kept letting you believe you were sick." I sat there, completely numb. My mother had lied to both of us. She had created 2 different realities in the same house. She had used fear to control me and medication to control him. And neither of us had known the full truth. I stood up slowly. "I need time," I said. "I need time to process all of this." Ethan nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand," he whispered. "But Sophia, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." I walked out of the room without saying another word. Outside in the hallway, my mother was waiting. She looked at me and knew I had heard the truth. "I thought I was protecting both of you," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought if I kept you both on medication, I could keep you safe. I thought I was being a good mother." I looked at her for a long time. "You weren't protecting us," I said. "You were controlling us. And now, look at what it cost all of us." I walked away from her without looking back. That night, as I sat in the motel room, I made a decision. I was done being the victim of my family's lies. I was done carrying their secrets. And I was done letting them decide my future. Tomorrow, I would start taking back everything they had stolen from me. But first, I had to face the one person who had hurt me the most: my mother. I walked out of the hospital that evening with my hands shaking and my mind completely numb. The parking lot lights blurred in front of my eyes as I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes, just staring at the steering wheel. Everything I thought I knew about my life for the last 8 years had been a lie. My mother had been secretly medicating my brother while feeding me sugar pills and calling it love. My brother had known the truth and let me live in fear so he could keep his supply. I didn't cry. I was past crying. What I felt was something colder, something quieter, something that felt a lot like the beginning of revenge. If you have ever discovered that the people who were supposed to protect you were the ones who hurt you the most, you know that the anger that follows is different from anything you've ever felt before. I drove back to the motel and sat on the edge of the bed. My phone kept lighting up with messages from my mother. I didn't read any of them. I just turned it off and lay down, staring at the ceiling. The next morning, I did something I had never done before in my life. I went to the pharmacy and asked to speak to the pharmacist. I showed him the orange bottle with my name on it and asked him to test the blue pills and the white pills I still had from home. He looked at me strangely but agreed to run a quick test. 30 minutes later, he came back with the results. The blue pills were real, strong anti-anxiety medication. The white pills were nothing but sugar and filler. I thanked him and walked out. That afternoon, I drove to my mother's house. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she had been waiting for me. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked like she hadn't slept. "Sophia," she whispered, "please come inside." I stepped into the house I had grown up in, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place where I had been slowly erased. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she used to watch me take the pills every single day. I placed the orange bottle between us. "I know everything," I said. "I know you were giving Ethan the real pills. I know you were giving me sugar. I know you lied to both of us for 8 years. My mother started crying again, but this time I didn't feel sorry for her. "I thought I was protecting you both," she sobbed. "I thought if I kept you both on medication, I could keep you safe. I was scared of losing you the way I lost your father when he started traveling more. I was scared of being alone." I looked at her for a long time. "You weren't protecting us," I said. "You were controlling us. You turned me into a sick girl so I would never leave you. You turned Ethan into an addict so he would need you. And you never once thought about what that would do to us." She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "I'm not here to forgive you," I said. "I'm here to tell you what's going to happen next." I told her I was moving out permanently. I told her I was cutting contact with her and Ethan for the time being. I told her that if she tried to reach out or interfere with my life in any way, I would go to the police and tell them everything, including how she had been given controlled medication to a minor without proper medical supervision. My mother looked like I had slapped her. "You would do that to your own mother?" she whispered. I stood up. "You stopped being my mother the day you decided my life was worth less than your fear," I said. I walked out of the house and didn't look back. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I found a small apartment in Portland. I started a new job at a bookstore. I went to therapy 3 times a week. I learned how to live without fear. I learned how to trust my own body. I learned how to make decisions without asking for permission. But the anger was still there, burning quietly in the background. Ethan got out of the hospital after 2 weeks. My mother told me he had agreed to go to rehab. I didn't respond to her message. I blocked her number. Then, one evening, about a month after I had moved out, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Ethan. I almost hung up, but something made me answer. "Sophia," he said, his voice weak. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I'm in rehab now. I'm getting help. I know I can never fix what I did to you, but I want you to know I'm trying." I stayed silent for a long time. Then I said the words I had been holding in for weeks. "You stole 8 years of my life, Ethan. You watched me live in fear every single day, and you said nothing. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, but I hope you get better, for your own sake, not for mine." I hung up before he could reply. That night, I sat on the floor of my new apartment and cried for the girl I used to be. The girl who believed she was dying. The girl who never got to live. But I also cried for the woman I was becoming. The woman who was finally free. The woman who was going to make sure no one ever used her again. And the woman who still had one more thing to do. The days after Ethan's overdose blurred together like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. I stayed at the motel for another week, avoiding my mother's calls and messages. Every time my phone lit up with her name, I felt the same mix of anger and exhaustion. Part of me wanted to scream at her.
Another part wanted to pretend none of this had ever happened. But the strongest part of me, the part that had survived 8 years of lies, knew I had to keep my distance until I was ready. One afternoon, my therapist asked me a simple question that changed how I saw everything. "Sophia," she said gently, "what do you want your life to look like now that you know the truth?" I thought about it for a long time. "I want to feel safe in my own body," I told her. "I want to make decisions without fear. I want to stop waiting for someone to tell me I'm allowed to live." She smiled like she had been waiting for that answer. "Then start living," she said. "Not as the sick girl your mother created, not as the victim your brother used, as Sophia, the real one." Those words stuck with me. I started small. I signed up for a beginner yoga class. I went for walks without worrying that my heart would suddenly stop. I ate foods I had avoided for years because my mother said they were dangerous for my condition. Every time I did something normal, I felt a little piece of myself come back. But the anger was still there, simmering quietly beneath the surface. Then one rainy Thursday evening, my mother showed up at the motel. She stood outside my door in the pouring rain, holding an umbrella and a small box. When I opened the door, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," she said before I could speak. "I'm here to give you something." She handed me the box. Inside were all the medical records from the past 8 years. Every doctor's note, every prescription, every test result. And at the bottom, a letter she had written the night Ethan overdosed. I read the letter in silence. In it, she admitted everything. She admitted she had exaggerated my symptoms to the doctors because she was terrified of losing me the way she had lost control of her own life. She admitted she had given Ethan the real medication because he begged her and she couldn't say no. She admitted she had used my illness to keep me close because she didn't know how to be a mother without being needed. At the end of the letter, she wrote, "I know I can't undo the damage I caused, but I want you to have the truth. All of it. And if you never want to see me again, I will understand. I love you, Sophia, even if I never knew how to show it the right way." I folded the letter and put it back in the box. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said quietly. "But I'm also not going to carry your guilt anymore. That's yours to deal with now." She nodded, tears falling down her face. "I understand," she whispered. "I just wanted you to know I'm getting help too. Therapy. I'm trying to be better." I closed the door after she left and sat on the bed with the box in my lap. For the first time, I didn't feel like the victim. I felt like someone who had survived. 2 months later, Ethan finished his first round of rehab. He sent me a long letter through my mother. In it, he took full responsibility. He said he had been selfish and scared. He said he was going to spend the rest of his life trying to make it right, even if I never spoke to him again. I didn't reply. Instead, I did something I had been planning for weeks. I started a small support group for people who had been medically gaslighted by family members. I called it the Truth Project. We met once a week in a community center. The first meeting had only 4 people. By the 3rd month, we had 22. Helping others heal slowly helped me heal too. One evening, a young woman named Maya came to the group. She told us her mother had been giving her sugar pills for years, claiming she had a rare autoimmune disease. She said she had just discovered the truth and didn't know how to move forward. I looked at her and saw myself at 17. After the meeting, I stayed behind and talked to her for over an hour. I told her my story. I told her it would be hard, but she would get through it. I told her she was allowed to be angry. I told her she was allowed to build a life that belonged to her. When I drove home that night, I realized something powerful. I had finally taken back what my family had stolen from me. Not by screaming, not by revenge in the traditional sense, but by living
by refusing to let their lies define me, by helping others break free from the same cycle. And that, I realized, was the quietest and most powerful revenge of all. If you have ever been let down by family on a day that was supposed to be perfect, drop a comment and also tell me where you're watching from. Drop your city. I read every single one. You know, looking back at everything that happened, I've come to understand one simple truth. Family doesn't get to decide who you are allowed to become. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from the people who try to keep you small, even if those people share your blood. It doesn't make you cruel. It makes you brave. I spent 8 years believing I was broken. I spent another few months learning how to be whole again. And now, for the first time in my life, I feel free. If my story taught me anything, it's this. Protect your peace. Protect your truth. And never let anyone, not even the people who raised you, convince you that your dreams are too big or your life is too fragile to live fully. Because the only person who gets to decide your worth is you. And I finally decided mine.